Good evening. I call this Iowa City Community School Board meeting on Tuesday, April 9th, 2019 to order. My name is Janet Godwin, and I want to thank those in the audience, those watching on YouTube, and those following on Twitter for joining us tonight. I'll start by introducing those at the table with me. Starting at my right, Superintendent Steve Murley, Directors Ruthina Malone, Phil Hemingway, Lori Rotland. To my left, Paul Ressler, Sean Eystone, JP Clausen, and Recording Secretary Kim Colvin. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table and turn it in. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda. And before we move into the agenda, I just want to make one remark about an agenda item tonight. We have an action item regarding the ICCSD FY 2020 proposed certified budget and tax certification. I just want to be clear with community members that this action item is not related to the budget cut discussions that we're having tonight. This action item is about setting the tax levy for the 2020 school year. We're required to take this action by the state by April 15th every year. And I just want to reiterate that that action on budget tonight has nothing to do with the budget cut discussion. We're going to discuss budget cuts this evening, and then our proposal is to vote on the budget cuts on the April 23rd board meeting. So with that information, I would like to move into the student representative portion of the agenda. And first up, we have City High. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello. My name is Yardley Whalen, and I am a junior student senator at City High. I'll be filling in for our usual representatives. First off, I'd like to take a moment to recognize that tonight is the City West soccer game, so best of luck to both teams, but I'm very excited to go and get to sit out and watch a good game in this nice weather. This past week, our senior mock trial team took 5th at state out of 34 teams with a perfect 3-0 record. As a mock trialer myself, I was happy to see that they set a record for our school, and I'm excited to try to beat it next year. Model UN also had their big convention at UNI over the weekend and had a great time meeting others and showing off their hard work. City High Dance Marathon had a successful evening and raised $4,300 for the Stead Family Children's Hospital at their beach-themed extravaganza, and we're very enthusiastic to see so many students come out. Our jazz bands had a great trip to their state jazz tournament, as well as they have improved from last year. They did not win big, but they had a great time performing together and giving it their best. Lastly, City High Drama is putting on Les Mis this weekend. They would love if you could come out and join them at 7:30 on Friday and Saturday night, or at their 2 o'clock matinees on Saturday and Sunday. They would like me to say that you will not want to miss it. That's all.
Very good. Thank you so much for the update. Appreciate it. Next up, representative from West High.
Good evening. My name is Aditi Borde, and I'm a sophomore at West High School. I am also filling in for the usual representative. Over the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot going on at our school. Just last Saturday, West hosted its first ever Eastern Iowa State Track and Field Festival. With over 30 different schools, this event was a year in the making. About 20 West High athletes achieved the Drake Relay Blue Standard as well. Also, 6 West High students were chosen to represent West at the Iowa All-State Jazz Band this year. The jazz ensemble members were led by Mr. Rich Med at the Iowa High School Jazz Championships last Tuesday, April 2nd. 25 students led by science teachers Ms. Eustace and Ms. Walling went to UNI for the State Science Olympiad. With many medal winners, including first place, West placed 4th overall. 4 students represented West at the 2019 High School National Chess Championships in Schaumburg, Illinois. Of the 4, 2 went on to finish first place in the Bug House to win national championships. A West High Economics team went on to win the State Economics Championship. Now they will attempt to finish in the top 8 in the nation and potentially win a trip to Wall Street, as well as the nation's title of Best Economics Team. James Mon has been chosen as the West High Music Department and UICCU's Outstanding Student of the Arts. He's been a part of wind ensemble, jazz band, symphony orchestra, and has sung in many choirs. James plans to study trumpet, jazz, and music education at the University of Northern Iowa as well. Additionally, West Hide's Story, the student-led newspaper and online publication, has recently been awarded as a Snow Distinguished Site. Coming up on April 25th, West will be hosting the Best Buddies annual talent show and family night. This will include fun performances, a silent auction, as well as a raffle. Also, later this week, West High will be producing its annual spring musical, Sweeney Todd. This is it's accumulation of lots of student efforts from our cast, crew, pit, and chorus. You can check it out Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 7, or at the Saturday matinee. We hope to see you there. As you can see, it's been a busy couple of months, and we have a lot to look forward to, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Next up, Liberty High.
Good evening. My name is Rizan Karar, and I'll be representing the Liberty Student Senate tonight. Yesterday, 6 Liberty juniors were selected among the top 50,000 PSAT high scorers in the nation and will receive recognition for the National Merit Scholarship process. Of those, 16,000 will move on to as semi-finalists in the fall. Legally Blonde, the musical, has its opening night this Thursday, in addition to shows on Friday and Saturday. Our theater department has been working hard on preparing for the musical and is looking forward to sharing their final product. Our Science Olympiad team competed in the state competition in the University of Northern Iowa 2 weeks ago, with 3 students placing in the top 3 in their events. And spring sports, tennis had its first meet last Tuesday with the first ever varsity winners on the girls' team, and soccer won its first home match recently, and the boys' team is currently competing against Xavier at home. Track and girls golf are also well underway. Our prom will be held April 27th with the theme A Night with the Stars. And we had Iowa State ISAS testing practice today with actual testing being held on the 16th and 17th for freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. In conjunction with other student organizations, our Student Senate will have a multicultural potluck planned for this month, in addition to other celebrations of Liberty's diversity. And the mayor of North Liberty, Mr. Donahoe, will be meeting with our Student Senate this Friday. We hope to utilize him as a mentor in structuring our government, as well as starting a green initiative to increase access to recycling in the lunchroom. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a nice night. We'll move into the ICEA update. Brady?
Hi, thanks, President Godwin, Vice President Russler, Superintendent Murley, directors. I'm Brady Shutt, President of the Iowa City Education Association. So as I read the documents for tonight's meeting, I was really struck by the number of detailed budget documents that we've all been working with since earlier in this year in December, I think. I think it was like polar vortex time, maybe, when we were all here at first. So I've been in the district for about 25 years, and I've been through 4 what I would consider to be significant major budget reduction, budget adjustment situations. And there's absolutely never an easy way to make a budget adjustment. And I've seen some that have been done poorly. And I want to just thank the board and Superintendent Murley for allowing ICEA to have constant updates on our progress, to have seats at the table, at the Education Committee, at the work sessions. All of that has really allowed me to much more effectively communicate with teacher members about what is going on. So I really have appreciated that, and I've appreciated our shared commitment to making sure that we're doing the very best that we can to keep everyone with us who wants to be with us for next year. RIFs, reductions in force, can be incredibly emotional and devastating for our young teachers. So I just want to thank you for everyone really working together to try to make sure that if we can avoid those. I'd also like to give a shout out. Chief Human Resources Officer Ramey has been fantastic. Constant collaboration with ICEA. He's attended building rep meetings to explain what's going on. He's tried some more creative things through the HR office that I think have really helped with our process. And I just really have appreciated the work that he's done as we've moved through this. None of this is going to make our budget shortfall easier. That's just going to be a tough situation. But I think all of that speaks very powerfully and meaningfully to our shared commitment to working together as one district. So thank you.
Thanks, Brady. Appreciate it. We'll move into community comment. And first up, we have Michelle Tron Duong. And I apologize if I mispronounced your name. And following Michelle, we've got Finn Gretman and Josie Bozarth. So Michelle first.
Good evening. Today I will be talking about the cut towards the Southeast Orchestra program. So I'd like to introduce myself first. My name is Michelle, and I'm currently a senior at City High School. I'd first like to thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of the board tonight and express my opinions on the cut towards the Southeast Orchestra program. I have been involved in the ICCSD orchestra program since the 4th grade, and throughout the 9 years that I've been a part of it, I have greatly enjoyed it. But what helped me have a wonderful experience in the program were the lessons that my directors provided. And this cut basically means that the director at Southeast will half the time be doing applied music, while half the time being orchestra, instead of that half other time providing lessons for students that need it. Many of my orchestra peers started orchestra in the 4th grade when it was still readily available and depended on school lessons, and some of them still do. We didn't have the privilege to receive private lessons, and we greatly, like I said again, depended on these lessons at school. We also weren't as skilled as other musicians who started with their respective instruments when they were 3 or 4 years old. And many of us are so-called orchestra kids who are both in band and orchestra, and some others also participate in sports, piano lessons, and other extracurriculars, which leaves them with very little time to get private lessons outside of school. From my own personal experience, I was also one of the students who participated in both band and orchestra, and I also played piano. My parents didn't have the financial capabilities to afford 3 different private lessons for me to take, and now lessons cost from $25 or maybe a little bit less up until the 50s range depending on the teacher. And because these free in-school lessons, they are able to keep students that cannot afford to take so many private lessons like me have lessons in school to help facilitate and develop our skills. Individual lessons with the orchestra director supplements the students who are at a disadvantage to private lessons. And these lessons are a learning experience for students. If they, by chance in the class, they cannot get a rhythmic pattern, they have trouble with notes, these lessons help them have one-on-one time with the orchestra directors to help them grow. If lessons are cut, the time for the orchestra directors to provide the lessons, these students cannot get help, and they will surely fall behind, and it could lead some students to quit the orchestra program altogether. This cut to the East Side Orchestra program will not only negatively affect the Southeast Orchestra, but also the City High Orchestras as well. Those who are currently enrolled in the City High Orchestras from this year forward did have the advantage of having school lessons like I did, which helped develop our skills and keep up with the other students who do have private lessons within the City High Orchestra. If this cut goes through, when students enter City High Orchestra, they will eventually fall behind because they don't have this one-on-one time with teachers to help facilitate and develop their skills. And as you move on through the orchestras, the repertoire and the pieces get more difficult, and they need more time with the teachers to help them with that difficult music. These in-school lessons are incredibly crucial for those orchestra students within Southeast right now. And not only for me, but many other students as well, these lessons have positively affected their experience within the ICCSD orchestra program. Cutting this will only negatively affect our orchestra program as a whole. I ask that you please rethink this cut to the East Side Orchestra program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time tonight, too. Appreciate your comments. Next up, Finn Gretman and Josie Bozarth.
I'm Josie Bozarth. I'm in 6th grade in Shimmick Elementary. I'll be going to Southeast Junior High next year. When you talk about funding our schools, I want to let you know how important music is to us. I play in both band and orchestra, the saxophone and the violin, and I love both of them. It's really important to me that all kids are able to participate in music lessons. Music is something that will carry with us forever, and every person should have an opportunity to learn music in school. So if cuts must be made, please don't cut our music. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Finn Gredeman. I live on Kimball Road. I'm her big brother, and I go to Southeast Junior High. I play the violin in orchestra, and I know that there are going to be some budget cuts next year. So I would like to let you know that cutting the budget and the time, or not the budget, cutting the time, cutting out the lessons does not allow many of the students to develop the skills that are like very vital to succeeding in orchestra, like tone and different patterns and different symbols and everything from top to bottom. I know firsthand there's a very wide skill difference from the kids that have started playing an instrument from day one, like my little sister. And then me, I started in 6th grade, no private lessons, just on the school program. And I've developed so much just because of those little half-hour lessons that without them, I don't think I would be able to be acceptable in the orchestra. I just think I would be at a totally different level, skill-wise, than all of the other kids that take the private lessons. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your remarks very much. Well, moving into the rest of our community comment, I just want to remind speakers of the 4-minute time limit. We've got a number of folks speaking tonight, and just would ask that folks stay within the time limit. So first up, we have Massimo Vickers, and followed by Jeff Vickers.
Hey, my name is Massimo Vickers. I'm an 8th grader at Southeast. Also, thanks for having me here. I spoke at the board last spring about solar energy in schools. You guys might remember that. Other schools have done have solar and have cut carbon emissions with it and have saved a ton of money. Why does our school pay for electricity from coal when it knows how much damage it does? It just doesn't really make sense. Last spring I never really heard back from you guys. I just got a letter saying thanks. But I'm here because I'm really worried about climate change. I'm on the rowing team, and I see the reality of climate change on the Iowa River, the increasing floods. We're not able to be on. We're not going to be able to be on the water for another week. The increasing also with my dog, the increasing ticks, and we're worried because of Lyme disease. We didn't go to school when the polar winds were pushed down from the Arctic. Every day there's a new study of a terrifying headline about climate change. I don't understand why adults are doing so little. But I worry about my future, about having a future. Did you worry about that when you were 13? On March 15th, I joined 1 million kids around the world and began a strike for climate action. This week will be my 4th week. We agree with Greta Thunberg, who has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And she always says, we have run out of excuses and we are running out of time. According to the IPCC, or the UN Council of the top scientists, we have 11 years to cut our carbon emissions and half for my generation have a livable planet. 11 years. And then we need to get to zero emissions by the time I'm your age. Last year in Iowa, carbon emissions increased by 3%. You are responsible for our education, but I've never had a class or unit on climate change. My school stopped recycling and composting, and unfortunately, our buses run on diesel. and half of my school electricity is from coal. And still no one talks about climate change. For 3 weeks, I've gone on strike on Fridays. I will strike until adults do something about the biggest crisis of our time. Last Friday, I went on strike in front of the superintendent's office. He said hi to me and said something about starting committees again, but I didn't really understand him. When I go on strike this Friday, I hope you and the superintendent will tell me your real plans for climate actions. I'll be waiting for you. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your energy on that. Jeff Vickers, followed by Carla Pacciotto.
I haven't been here for 4 years, and I told my kid I would never come back. But that was my kid, Massimo. I don't have his hair. His mom does. And I'm here for him. And I first off want to say thank you. You are a new board compared to 4 years. I only recognize Phil. And I really appreciate the time you invest. It's just an incredible, incredible dedication to our community. And especially with budget cuts and the massive responsibility you have, deep, deep appreciation. JP, Sean, Paul, Janet, Lori, Phil, and Ruthina, really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate it. You know, it's very easy for us to come and complain. And I understand you're putting in the hours to really try to make it work for this incredible district, and we love Iowa City. So I'm a journalist and historian, but I am a father, and we know the global scientists have given us our homework. We have a decade to turn around a sinking ship. A decade. And my son comes up to me and says, "Dad, are you up to the task?" It's not his job. He's 13 years old. He's an honor student. His music program's getting cut. He's on the rowing team. He was first in jazz. It's not a 13-year-old kid's responsibility to come here. It's our job. And so we have to ask, are we up to the task to do this? I have never received an email in all these years about climate change from the district, despite all these things. In the past few weeks, I've received 8 emails about the after-prom party. Now, climate change is not the prom, I understand. But it's important. It's not a cause, it's not an issue, it's not an agenda item. It's science, it's reality. This is what we're facing. This is our kids' future. And if we don't do enough, it's catastrophic. And we know that. We know what happened 2 weeks ago in western Iowa to our farmers. Now, your schools have geothermal, many of them. And that is great. Thank you so much. But that only helps heating and cooling. And in fact, it needs electricity. And the new schools have energy efficiency. And that's great. You have really top-level energy efficiency. I spoke for the MLK Day at Liberty High, and they showed me all around. Really good. But you have not thought about your electricity. Half of it coming from coal-fired, the #1 contributor. You haven't thought about your transportation, the daily operations. And we don't have a climate curriculum in Iowa City, the most educated city in the nation, in the year 2019. Now, 4 years ago, we had a huge parent committee. We wanted solar. We collected thousands of petitions. We took the staff on tour. We did all the homework for the staff. We showed you what a power purchase agreement is. We showed you all the school districts, Dubuque, Cedar Rapids. We took you to Kelowna. We showed you all the rural areas, Crawfordville, got national news, turned around their budget deficit. Everybody was turning to solar, not just to save the planet, but to save money. And if 4 years ago you had done something about it, you would be hiring more music teachers and not be in a budget deficit. And that is why I'm here, is that we need the board to step up. That if your staff is not up to the task, we need you to be up to the task. So we can't let our kid do this strike anymore. He's missing school. So we're going to join him. And a lot of people are going to join him. On Friday, we'll be here in the lobby in front of the superintendent to see what he says to our son. And we invite you to join us, but to move forward and have one thing. It will cost you nothing. At the end of my time, an RFP for solar power purchase agreement, just to make a good decision. We did it 4 years ago. It's time we do it again. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for the challenge. Next up, Carla, followed by Lisa Schrock.
Good evening. My name is Carla Pachot. I'm the third member of the family here. I'm a professor of education. I'm Massimo's mother. So I'm here as a parent. I'm here also as a teacher educator. The daily reports on climate change can be overwhelming for educators and parents, as you well know. According to a recent Yale study, 70% of American parents are now worried about climate change. Psychologists see an increasing anxiety among children on climate change realities. Our kid is one of them. Kids want to know what we are doing. And they spend almost 8 hours a day in the schools. As you know, school is where crucial knowledge and skills are being developed. We've been in touch with several great teachers in Iowa City who are trying to find ways to include climate change in their courses. But we find that it's a sporadic effort. It's just up to the single teacher to do that. There's no plan. So at this point, we really feel like it's time for school districts to redefine what it means to educate students for a future of certain climate change. There's no debate anymore. There's no time for debating. And at this point, it's simply negligence as educators if we go on with business as usual, as if nothing is happening. Instead, this is a great opportunity for us to see climate change as a framework for curriculum development and curriculum reform, not just a special unit for a few days for AP science students. This is what usually happens, in biology. That's not enough. And it's an opportunity to empower all the schools to make climate literacy an essential part of our city's school mission. Take the Portland Public Schools. 3 years ago, the school board passed a climate literacy resolution that declared, it is essential that in their classes and other activities, students probe the causes and consequences of the climate crisis, as well as possible solutions in developmentally appropriate ways, and it is essential that from pre-K through 12th grade, they become climate literate. Portland Public Schools commits itself to providing teachers, administrators, and other school personnel with professional development, curricular materials, and outdoor and field studies that explore the breadth of causes and consequences of the climate crisis, as well as potential solutions that address the root causes of the crisis, and do so in ways that are participatory, imaginative, and respectful of students and teacher creativity and eagerness to be part of addressing global problems. So there are many examples out there. We really have no excuse. How do we begin the process of a climate literacy resolution and curriculum for our city schools? We're asking you. How we plan to join Massimo's strike on Friday to move this discussion forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. When are you striking? What time is it? At noon. Thank you. Next up, we've got Lisa Schrock, followed by Katie Sen.
Good evening. And I am Lisa Schrock, and I'm the orchestra director at Southeast Junior High. And first off, I want to just thank you all for being here this evening. My own mother was on the school board when I was in junior high, and I know how many evenings I went to bed before she got home. So I just want to thank you for the time, and it's a very thankless job, and I'm very aware of that, and I just want to thank you for being here. I would like to say that I'm here to talk about the proposed cuts for the Southeast Orchestra program from a full-time position to a half-time position. I'm concerned that the proposal will negatively affect the orchestra program on the east side of Iowa City for several reasons. It will create an inequity in the orchestra programs across the district, as the cut is only for Southeast Junior High. This would create a disparity between the amounts of FTE allotted per student in the junior high programs across the district. I am also concerned because of the cuts that occurred to the orchestra program in recent years. Since the cut of the 4th grade strings program in 2014, district orchestra staff have been spread very thin, to the point that one of our elementary directors was assigned to 11 elementary schools at the same time. I am grateful that last year an additional half-time position was added to the East Side Elementary Orchestra program, and we are already seeing the positive effects of having each teacher assigned in less buildings and less schools. The program is growing, and next year the orchestra at Southeast will be the largest that I have ever had during my tenure here at the Iowa City Community School District. The free and reduced numbers at Southeast are also growing, and I'm worried that the cut to lessons next year will create an even bigger gap between those students who can afford to take private lessons and those that cannot or choose to take private lessons in the community. The current proposal will cut the amount of time that I'm able to teach lessons in half, and students will receive, meaning that students will receive half the number of lessons, or they will be taught in larger groups, and that's a decision that if this goes through, I'll have to make what is best for, that I think is best for the students. This will significantly limit their progress. This becomes a problem because a problem for all students, regardless of whether they are taking lessons privately or at school, because they all perform in the same ensemble. We have a 7th grade orchestra and we have an 8th grade orchestra, which I think is very important, that they are all with their peers. The advanced students who have studied privately are often the leaders in the ensemble, and I have noticed that if the students that are not receiving those lessons are not advancing at adequate progress, that those students become frustrated and see that they do not want to be a part of this program because it is a lower quality program than what they perceive and hope for, and have had students quit that decide that that is not a part of that. And I am afraid that that would happen if we have these cuts and that students are only receiving half of the lesson time. Thank you for listening, and I hope you will reconsider the cuts being made to the Southeast Orchestra program.
Thank you, Lisa. Katie?
Hi, my name is Katie Sen. I'm the Vice President of the Iowa City Music Auxiliary and a parent of 2 kids in the Iowa City Music Program. I greatly empathize with Lisa Schrock. I'm a former orchestra teacher. I taught for almost 10 years at Cedar Rapids Jefferson High School, leading their orchestra. I was hired in a part-time capacity, verbally told that that following year I'd become full-time, and unfortunately that administrator left and that promise was never fulfilled. After 3 years of teaching, I found myself in the office full-time every single day, and I was only getting paid 0.6 or 0.7 depending on the year. I took on a second program so that I could be paid as the rest of my teachers were in my community. And I found that the great work that I had done with the Jefferson Orchestra, increasing their numbers 3-fold, diminished. Every day I had to make a choice between my high school students and my middle school students because there's never enough time in the day. Lisa's a fantastic teacher, and what we're doing by cutting this program is that we're disenfranchising our children. We need to make sure that they're supported, and music is the perfect place for them to be. We, as music teachers, we get to actually know these students. We get to follow them for multiple years, and we provide that support. And when we cut Lisa's position, we are cutting those children's opportunities in music. We're hurting the City High Orchestra as well. And so I would really love for you to consider what cutting this program is going to do to our entire community. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Katie. Next up, Miriam Kashia, followed by Becky Ha.
Hi, folks.
Good evening.
My name's Miriam Kashia. I live in North Liberty. And I don't have any kids in the schools here, but I am a resident of Johnson County, and I've raised kids, and I'm a member of 100 Grannies for a Livable Future, who like to educate, advocate, and agitate, and I'm one of the agitators. So, having said that, I want to read this to you. I got this on my cell phone while I was sitting in the parking lot 5 minutes before I entered this building. This was from KWWL, top of the news this morning. East Dubuque School District adds solar panels to buildings. Eagle Point Solar and East Dubuque Schools are putting the finishing touches on 1,400 solar panels on the roof of the high school building and the school bus garage. And here's a quote. When you look at the savings amount that is going to be for the school over a period of 25 years, It is in an excess of $750,000, so it's an excellent project. It's great for the school. I'm going to repeat that number, $750,000. You heard Jeff say if you'd done this 4 years ago, you'd save money. But we're not only trying to save money, we're trying to save the planet. And we're trying to save the future of these kids. You know, we owe a lot to the children of this generation and the ones behind it, because we have failed to do what we needed to do. You're well-educated people, responsible. You know what's happening in the world. Well, we have not done what we needed to do. We've known for 50 or 100 years this was coming, and particularly the last 30 years. I walked across the country 5 years ago because nobody was paying attention to the climate crisis. A lot of attention is being paid now, but we're 5 years more down the line. We can't wait another 5 years. You know this, I know this. So what I'd like to hear from you, on behalf of these young people who are trying to do what we should have done, as Jeff pointed out, and I'm not chastising you, though it sounds that way, I'm chastising all of us. We need to do what we need to do in our schools. I'm a member of the Unitarian Society who just built the greenest church in Iowa. I know what it takes. It takes willpower, it takes determination, it takes getting the job done. We're net zero out there in Coralville, and I'm really proud of that. So, we need to educate these kids. We need to give them classes so they know what's happening in their world. We need to let them observe what it means to compost and recycle in a meaningful way. And we need to put solar panels on the roof, both so they can save energy in the schools and they know we're working for them, and so they can learn. So it's up to us, it's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Becky, followed by Mary Kenyon.
Another granny. Thank you for letting me come tonight and speak to you, and thank you for all your hard work. I know what you do. I'm Becky Ha. I'm a retired Iowa City Community School District teacher, 10 years out. So, my concern, I'm here tonight supporting the students, these brave students. I'm going to be here Friday. I plan to be here Friday. We know how it feels for them not to be heard, because we've been, since 2012, not felt like we were all alone, but now things are starting to happen. Youth and children and university students are starting to pay attention, so it's really exciting. This is an exciting time. If we truly value education and expect students to value education, we must respect the scientists who are the experts and have been telling us for ages. And just in Iowa City, we have great scientists. James Hansen, Storms of Our Grandchildren. If you haven't read that great book, read that one. Connie Mutel, these are all people I've heard talk and have met personally. She's around and she has written, this is an excellent book, The Sugar Creek Chronicles. Gerald Schnorr, university professor. These are people that, and tell us we need to be acting. Now, Mark Jacobson from Stanford, he has a plan for every state. He has a plan for Iowa and what we can do, and solar is a big part of that to change things around. So we need to be doing something. I went to school here, kindergarten through 12th. And one of the things I really learned was critical thinking. My teachers, especially at City High, that was so important. And I am using those skills now that I taught back in the, I won't tell you what year, but that was a long time ago. I want Iowa City, the community school district, to be leaders. I feel like the last few years, and I'm not blaming anyone, that we have kind of lost that leadership role. So let's get that back and do some things. Let's go. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Appreciate your remarks. Mary, followed by Christine, Mueller. I'm sorry about the name. If I get it incorrect, I apologize. Mary, thank you.
My name is Mary Kenyon. I live in Iowa City. I have a 7th grader at Southeast and a 5th grader at Lucas. I've spoken here before, and I usually end by thanking all of you for your work on behalf of our community, our kids, our teachers. Tonight, I want to start with that message. thank you, all of you. The work you are doing is incredibly difficult. You are choosing the least terrible ways to make up for the woeful underfunding of public education in our state. I know you do not take this lightly, and I trust you all to make decisions on our behalf. That said, I do have some input I'd like to share about proposed secondary level cuts to music and science. These may seem disparate, but for my family, and I know for many others, they are intertwined. The proposed cuts include eliminating the option for 8th graders to take Earth and Space Science, which is a required course in 9th grade. Taking the course early allows students to advance more quickly to higher level electives in high school. The option exists to take it concurrently with biology as a 9th grader, but here's where the music comes in. If you use one of your 2 elective periods for the extra science and one for foreign language, which the 4th year of foreign language is sort of required for college-bound students, there's no room for band or orchestra. So you're also proposing cuts to the orchestra at Southeast that will reduce the time for lessons and weaken the core of the orchestra program. A previous board already cut the 4th grade orchestra in an effort to save money. To now add another reduction, plus this indirect impact I'm referencing with the science cut, feels like a death by 1,000 cuts for music education in Iowa City. I do not expect you to make decisions based on individual students and family needs. I know you have to decide what's best for the whole district and all of its students. I actually worked to get several of you elected based on your commitment to that principle. I only ask that you consider the unintended but very real consequences of the proposed cuts to science and to music. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Christine, followed by Kate Ralston. I apologize, I didn't get your last name.
So my name is Christine Mueller. I speak to you in the capacity of president of the Music Auxiliary and as a parent of 2 children who have participated in both the district strings and band programs. I thank you for this opportunity. The concern I'd like to raise is one we've heard about quite a bit already this evening. It relates to the effects of a proposal for what on paper seems to be a small shift in the teaching assignments of the music programs as part of a larger effort to deal with the district budget crisis. I bring this up because my impression and that of others throughout the community is that the proposed changes will actually have quite a large negative impact on our orchestra programs. It's much larger than anticipated. So, as you've already heard, to be specific, that a retirement among the music staff at Southeast would be accommodated by shifting course assignments for general music from the outgoing choir teacher to an orchestra teacher. And the shift is possible only if that orchestra teacher's lesson time are cut in half. So unfortunately, as you've already heard tonight, this comes at a time when this orchestra program is growing significantly. So it would likely have a major impact on the program, and it would likely seriously affect many students who really can't afford to have private lessons. I was happy to hear through my recent correspondence with board members and Superintendent Murley that they have a deep appreciation of our music programs from elementary through high school, of the importance of these programs to our students, of the outstanding instructors that we have, and of the students who produce amazing results. I was also encouraged to hear that the board is committed to ensuring that our music programs remain intact, and that if initial plans are unbalanced and might negatively impact the future of our students, they will be revisited. I thank you for this commitment to our community and encourage you to seriously consider alternative ways to address the issue in question. I look forward to hearing how this issue is eventually resolved, and I would like to end by thanking you for all that you do for our community. I fully recognize that being a board member is not easy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. Kate Ralston, followed by Diane Platt.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We're brand new to the district. My son and I moved here just last fall, so he started in Southeast, 7th grade. And as a brand new kid starting middle school, he came to a place where he needed to find new friends, and the very first place where he went, being a music kid in his prior to the move life, he came to the orchestra and found the great support and friends and community in Southeast Orchestra under the direction of Lisa Schrock. And when we think about the cuts to the music program, we need to think about broader implications that action will actually take. I work in college admissions, and we see a huge decline and debate and both the evidence that there is a decline in student interest and preparation level in many areas, but especially in STEM-related and math fields. And it's no secret anymore, and the well-researched and scientifically supported fact that studying music, especially strings music, actually helps child develop the necessary brain connections to be comprehensively prepared for studying complicated patterns such as math. And when we think about cuts to the music, we're not only thinking about reducing the opportunities for children to learn to appreciate a different level of beauty and different level of complexity, but also reducing their opportunity to be prepared and well-qualified specialists once they graduate and move forward with their lives. So when you make a decision, please consider the very broad implications of that. Plus, on top of that, just from the year of spending with the orchestra in Southeast, our program is very strong and very competitive and very highly recognized. This year we had a group of 8 students, I believe, who went to the honors, junior honors Iowa Orchestra competition. And they have this opportunity, and once we cut the program, we are not only reducing the just general opportunity to be exposed to music, but also the opportunities for kids who don't have other ways to study music as well. So equality is also an issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. Diane, followed by Mark Awad.
Good evening. Thank you for being here to hear us tonight. I am also speaking in support of the Southeast Orchestra program. I'm a parent of a student at Southeast Junior High and a student at Longfellow Elementary. I'm also a private teacher. I play cello in Orchestra Iowa, and I also teach orchestra at Regina. And I'll be very brief. Lessons are a very crucial part of a student's experience in orchestra. In my 18 years as an orchestra teacher, I've battled the perception, the wrong-headed perception that orchestra is not something that's for every student. And if we eliminate the opportunity for students to have lessons at school, we buy into that notion. We're essentially privatizing orchestra education because we have fantastic private teachers in this town. We're very blessed. But not every student can afford private lessons. And if we rely on those teachers to support our public school programs, that's not what we do as a public school district. So I just wanted to illustrate that this is an equity issue, that we really need to be in support of all students and not just sort of taking care of those students who are already signed up for private lessons, who have lessons before they even start 5th grade orchestra or that sort of thing. Thank you very much for hearing us all tonight.
Thank you, Diane. Mark, followed by Latasha Deloche.
Hello, board members, Superintendent Murley, thank you for all you do. Thanks for this platform. I'll apologize for my lack of eloquence in advance. I came here straight from teaching. I don't have a prepared statement, but I have 30-odd words I scribbled on the back of the agenda here. So we'll hope that those guide me well. My name is Mark Awad. I'm an orchestra teacher in this district. I live in North Liberty. I teach at North Central Junior High, Penn Elementary, and Van Allen Elementary. This is my 10th year teaching. So pretty sure I'm gonna get the hang of it really soon here. Miss Schrock is from everything that I can tell, a model teacher. Though she's younger than I am and hasn't been teaching as long, I hope to be as organized, as on top of things, as involved in the community as she is. I've seen her kids interact with her at honors orchestras, and they love her to pieces. She is a major factor, a major influence, a major cornerstone in their lives. You can tell by how they interact with her. In no particular order, I'm just going to go through a few points here and hope I don't run out of time. So, if we're cutting a position from full-time to half-time, you've got 7th grade orchestra and 8th grade orchestra. Whether those classes have 15 people or 50 people or 100 people in them, those are 2 periods out of the day that you teach. If you have an 8-period day and a teacher has 2 preps, that's 6 periods to teach, 2 periods of orchestra, 4 periods of lessons. Most orchestra teachers and most band teachers will not take those 2 preps, so they'll teach more than that. But if we're going by that, and we say that you cut to halftime, you are actually more than cutting lesson time in half. You would go, well, you'd be cutting it technically down to a quarter. Now, I'm sure that Ms. Schrock would be teaching during some of that time, so I don't think effectively it would be that way, but it's something to think about if we go by contract time. I would encourage us to question whether we look at orchestra and performance music as a nice club, a nice thing that kids do, right? It's pretty, it's good to put on a college application, or whether it's a real discipline that we want to approach with real rigor, with an eye toward real quality of education. If we take it seriously, and if we take the equity issues seriously, and take seriously the kids who can't afford private lessons, whose parents are not likely to bring them to board meetings, we have to take seriously the impact that the reduction in lessons is going to have on them and going to have on how the program moves forward and how it's perceived. I'd like you to consider that an orchestra classroom is like a one-room schoolhouse. If you're talking about math as an analogy, you have everything from remedial math to second-year calculus in there. One of the main ways in which we differentiate, and there are strategies we can use in the classroom, but one of the main ways we differentiate is in the lessons, in having small enough, manageable enough groups that we can do that kind of work. When the 4th grade strings were cut, I was not able to teach my junior high kids every week. They had to be on a rotation, on deck sometimes, and in bigger than ideal groups, and I definitely saw the impact of it. So please reconsider. It is morally incumbent upon us to find a better way to do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Latasha.
Okay, fancy. Good evening. I am here to talk about elementary boundaries. So, I am in support of elementary boundaries. However, I started to think about the fact that there's always a particular area in our community. They usually have reactions when they find out that something has happened to them, because sometimes, for some reason, we think that community outreach and community engagement are the same thing, and they are not. So just because an email goes out and invites you to a meeting, that is not community engagement. And for instance, the neighborhood in which I live, a lot of those folks don't feel comfortable going to those spaces or coming down here to the microphone. So I said, I ain't scared of them, I'm gonna go. So the issue is when the elementary boundaries got changed over in the Alexander Wood area in which I live, you all took folks who lived in manufactured homes who were in an avid school and you put them in a non-avid school, which is a huge oversight. It's a huge loss of income, because how much money have we spent on avid to take kids who, in particular, kids of color who benefit from avid programs, and then we put them in a school without any teachers of color and without that support that they had. That's problematic. And so I really hope that you all give people at least the opportunity to transfer if they want to stay in an AVID school. Grantwood is an AVID school. Alexander is an AVID school in that neighborhood. So if people want to exchange between the two schools, I don't know if it's going to make that big of a difference. I don't know what the raw numbers are, but it is problematic. And especially in neighborhoods where people historically do not come out, or when they find out that the floor is falling, then we get droves of people and we have to do this thing. So I'm trying to say this before fall so that you can have this in your mind as a potential area to reconsider having an opportunity for folks to transfer their kids if they would like. Because the kids who live in that neighborhood were being bused either way. They were being bused at Alexander and now they're being bused. I understand that. I don't have a problem with the busing. I just do have a problem with taking basically schools who have a certain structure and then you put them in a school without that structure. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a struggle, especially with the support system that they have there. So I'm just asking you all to please reconsider that, think about that, and work. We have to work harder to do engagement in communities with people who are less likely to show up here at this microphone, to show up here with organizations to support them. And that does happen from time to time, but it takes a ton of mobilizing. As a person who have to mobilize people to do that, it takes a ton of mobilizing to get those folks to come to that. So don't have the idea or the thought that those folks don't care about their children's education, that they don't care about where their children are going and how they're impacted. We have too much research that support that we need more teachers of color. It is odd to me that there are only 2 schools that have made it a passion and a drive to particularly have teachers of color. When you walk into those schools, I will tell you right now, as a parent, when I walked into those schools, I did not know the difference between the teachers and the parents because it was diverse. And that's how all of our schools should be, especially in schools where we have large populations of kids of color. It makes a difference about kids thinking that they can go to college or trade school or whatever when they see others that are out there working. Please look at the research. We have it. It's tons of it. So please reconsider potentially that these kids have an opportunity to transfer. You all were able to do it for other neighborhoods. I'm just asking for an exception for families who need that help. Thank you.
Thank you, Latasha. Appreciate it. And thank you all for and participating in community comment. We really do appreciate you taking the time to speak your thoughts to us. We do listen and appreciate, again, your commitment to our schools and our students. With that, we'll move into our agenda approval. Is there a motion to approve our agenda for this evening?
We approve our agenda.
Second.
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. Phil, do you want to do an update on the bills? I also reviewed them too, but you please start.
Make sure I get the right one, yep. Yes, this period we had $6.4 million worth of expenditures. 4.8 were out of the GO bond, 1.3 out of the general fund. There were some questions I had concerning Johnson County refuse being used for our down garbage truck, some other expenditures for summits and travel, and concerns that we're using a printing company that is much higher for printing needs than one that has already been identified. I thought that we'd corrected that, and the Terracon contract in there, but concerns there with that contract and that structure, but everything was, most of the questions were answered. And
thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil, for that report. I reviewed the bills this period as well. I had a question about the VAST kits, which JP actually commented on, and just because of the sum, I was happy to hear it's an annual expense. And so that was a question that I had as well. didn't have a chance to ask the district this question, but just as I was going through, seeing a lot of the expenses with Hilliard and other kinds of suppliers, just for like supplies and stuff, I just thought it would be, I would just like to learn a bit more about the nature and the terms of those agreements and, you know, how we choose which one for certain matters. And so it's a question not for tonight, obviously, since I'm just raising it, but I think maybe either through email or a future kind of review of bills. I'm just, again, wanting to understand a bit better how those contracts are termed and just sort of the structure of them. So that was my only observation in addition to the VAST kits. So with that, are there any agenda items, consent agenda items that directors would like to pull for discussion?
Yeah, I just have a quick, let's see, it's the City High number 6. Just a quick question on that one.
Any others?
No.
I move that we approve the consent agenda minus item 6.
I second.
To vote?
Sorry, before, go ahead.
Just, did you want to
well,
pull
I just have a
that?
question, or just, I guess, clarification. So just to be clear, we're approving Appendix 9 as presented with the rejection of the City High bid? Okay.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Godwin, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Thank you. Phil, question on item 6.
Yes, it says in the description that 3 quotes were City High Yearbook Advisory obtained 3 quotes for the vendor options. However, they went, we don't get all the quotes that were given. We just get the one that was successful. My only question would be is in the future, if we get additional quotes, if they just be provided for informational purposes, that's all.
Okay.
Move that we approve the City High Yearbook agreement.
Second.
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Public hearing number 1, certified budget hearing.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the district's proposed fiscal year 2020 certified budget and setting the tax rate. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on March 26, 2019. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on March 27, 2019. Are there any questions from the board related to the certified budget and setting the tax rate? Are there any questions from the public related to the certified budget and setting the tax rate?
Thank you. That concludes the public hearing on the certified budget. Next up, Kirkwood Elementary addition.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the Kirkwood Elementary addition project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on March 12, 2019. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on March 13, 2019. The district will receive bids for this project at 2 p.m. April 11, 2019 at the Education Services Center located at 1725 North Dubuque Street, Iowa City, Iowa 52245. Notice of contractors was published as required by law on multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on March 13, 2019. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Thank you. That concludes the public hearing on the Kirkwood Elementary addition. Now we'll move into our discussion items. The first item is our 2019 and 2020 budget reductions. Just a couple comments before Steve kind of walks us through this latest draft. Like Brady, I was reflecting on all the different versions that were posted. We started this work back in December, and you can see the really significant evolution of our thinking since December. I think the board, weighed in pretty early around wanting to protect staff and teachers as much as possible. And we also weighed in early that we wanted to make sure that there were not disproportionate cuts on programs serving underserved students. And I think we've seen that evolution throughout the early budget proposals and what we're seeing and discussing tonight. I know that this is far from perfect. These are the best of really, really bad choices in many regards. We heard a lot about that tonight during community comment. So Just wanted to thank Steve and his team and the board for all the work that's been put in, and to community members who have come and given us their feedback on this throughout the process as well. So Steve, you want to walk us through?
Sure. So again, thanks to everybody who's been part of this process. I know we've been meeting on it, which probably feels like forever, and we started in December. And through our work sessions on an every other week basis, you've helped us to put together a slate of proposals that will meet our budget goals and hopefully put us in a position, which we've talked about at length, about being able to recover from this as quickly as possible as we look at future budgets. One of the things that I would like to point out as we go through it is that if you look back over it, we're obviously going to look at the final product tonight, but one of the things that we've been asking on a regular basis at every other week at our meeting is, where are those hard stops? And for those who have not been present for us, either in the community watching on TV, that's been a difficult process because we recognize that it's kind of a zero-sum game, and if we take away here, we add there. And as a board, I'd like to thank you for being very thoughtful about that process and trying to really focus on the students in the district who have the greatest needs and trying to preserve resources for those kids. We've got several categories that I'm going to go through. I would ask you to remind me of details that I may bypass, just having talked about it so much, both with you and the administrative team over the past 4 months. First on the list, we've got administrator staff reduction and restructuring. At this point in time, we have multiple retirements out of our district administrative team. We plan to refill one of those at a lower level. We plan to leave 2 of them vacant for next year. We're also looking at some selective administrative pay freezes as we move forward. We're still in that meet and confer process right now. We have a projected savings for that of $483,253. The next one on there, we've spoken about at length, and this is our early retirement program. This, as we pointed out on multiple occasions, is really a double-edged sword for the district. I'd have to defer to Chase for the actual number, but I think we are approaching approximately 2,000 years of experience in the district when we look at all of the employees in the district that'll be retiring at the end of the year. That's an enormous gap and a gulf for us to fill moving forward. But we do have 45 retirees. You can see the breakdown there. We have 31 elementary teachers, 10 junior high school, 12 high school, and 6 district staff. Broken down by area where they function. We've got 35 regular ed teachers, 10 special ed teachers, 10 student services staff, and 4 administrators. Collectively, as we look at our retirement savings for that, that's approximately $1.6 million. And Brady's still here, so I'd like to reach out and say thank you to him. Normally, resignations happen for us over the course of the summer. Significant others and partners take other jobs, people find other opportunities, and they transition into the next chapter of their life. As they do that, they transition out of working for us. Not uncommon for us to get resignations as late as August as we're preparing for the school year. One of the things that we recognized as we went through the process and looking back over time was the substantial number of resignations that we got during the summer. And the question that we asked ourselves was, is there any way for us to reach out to our staff and get from them a better understanding of where they'll be next year? So in cooperation with the ICEA, we sent a survey out to the staff asking them to share with us where they thought they would be next year. They were incredibly responsive. We got about a 95% return rate. We were able to align that versus those who had already submitted retirements and realized that we had a gap there. We had people that said, I think I'm going to be somewhere else next year, but we're not retirees. So we reached out through the association and asked them to help carry the message through Rep Council out to their buildings to help people understand that their choice could have a significant impact on a teacher who worked across the hall or across town. And as a result of that, we had 27 people who stepped forward to share with us that they plan to transition out of the district at the end of the school year. And so from that, we're able to achieve approximately $300,000 in savings from those resignations. As we look at staffing at the elementary level, we use a weighted resource allocation model. We've got 5 factors that we look at there. The number of students that are English language learner students, the number of students that qualify for special education services, the number of kids who are low socioeconomic status, the state report card, and our new national report card designation. As we look at those, we stratify our districts from highest need to lowest need, and we staff accordingly with both our certified staff and our support staff. One of the things that we were able to do because of that very deliberate model of staffing was to look at some slight adjustments as we move through that model. By doing that, we're able to reduce overall approximately 21 sections from our entire elementary school population. By doing that, we save about another $1.5 million. One of the things that happens when you reduce elementary sections, those kids also participate in art, music, and PE. And then collectively, as we look at no longer having those 21 sections, you can see a commensurate reduction in the specialists working in those areas. That's approximately 3.1 FTE, which is approximately $224,000. At the secondary level, and that's much of the conversation we had tonight, we're looking at a reduction of approximately 9 FTE. Again, I knew that I'd forget something as I went through. One of the key processes that we looked at when we talked about the numbers up above with retirements, and the reason that we put an early retirement package in place, and Brady referred to this earlier, is we have a choice when we go through budget reductions of either reducing people or positions. And if your complement of staff is full, you have no choice but to reduce people. If you have vacancies created through retirement or resignation, it gives you the opportunity to reduce positions and not people. We spend a significant amount of time, energy, effort, and money recruiting new staff, putting them through an induction process, providing professional development for them. We've got a lot invested in our younger teachers, and we recognize for them a great opportunity to develop and spend a career with us as educators here in Iowa City. And so a decision was made early on in the process to reduce positions and not people. And so to that end, in our secondary staffing, the charge was given to the administrative team to look at those resignations and retirements that we had, and from that to find 9 FTEs of savings in there, and that's in an attached document. And we can go through that when we're done with this. Matt's here to help answer us questions with that. And that rolls into the next one, which is our teacher library staffing reduction. And I know we've had quite a bit of conversation about this, both at the table and at here at community comment. We have 3 retirements within our library staff. I will say that I appreciate the work that our library coordinator and staff have done in creating some processes, a couple of different options for us to consider as we look at how to work a few positions short here over the next year in order to meet the needs of our kids. That's approximately $200,000 in savings. We provide a per pupil allocation on a building by building basis, and we're proposing reducing that $150,000. We've been going through our third priority contracts. Those are contracts with entities outside the district. We looked at every single contract that had an expiration date between now and July 1st and canceled all of the contracts or ended the non-renewal process for all those that were preparing to expire between now and the end of the calendar year. And then at the last meeting, we had a long conversation about attendance support busing and some pretty significant concerns that were identified at Southeast Junior High. There was a request made to add back an attendance support bus there to ensure the ability for those kids to get to school regularly on a reliable basis, and that adds $30,000 back into the budget. And the bottom line there, you can see we're close. I would argue that this is a rounding error for us. We still have a $3,296 gap here, but what this does is this brings us in on a budget that's balanced and ensures that we are in a good position to move through the budget next year. So I know I went through 4.5 months worth of work there in about 10 minutes, but those of you that have been with me on the journey, if you have questions that we should answer in order to help ensure that people who have not been with us are up to speed, we're ready to do that.
I don't have questions on this part of the discussion. I think we should turn to the secondary document, secondary cuts document. I mean, what you just went through, Steve, is very consistent with what we discussed in the last work session.
And Matt, you can feel free to chime in here and lead through this. Again, the charge was put to our full secondary admin team, so that includes our principals and APs. They've been working on this for about 2 months now. Part of what they had to do was they had to wait for student registrations to come in. They needed confirmation on retirements, and then they were able to look at the resignations that we've received in the past few weeks. So, Matt, you want to lead them through that?
Thanks, guys. Yeah, what you see in the document there, I won't walk you through every single cell, but you see the schools, and then you see kind of the source of those reductions. The one thing I would just caution you on is, for example, with West and City there, when you see the actual number and then the source of those, some of those are even still moving parts as we get people that are leaving our system now, or as people are getting hired into teacher leadership positions. Some of those things are changing. The piece I've told the principals is the overall has to stay constant as far as where we're looking at for the FTE to be reduced. So, for example, City High, it's not truly a 1.0 math reduction anymore. They've had a science teacher leave, and so they've shifted and covered some of the staffing that way, so they're not necessarily losing math sections in that sense. That's pretty fluid at those two high schools. Liberty's is more solid, only the 0.2 reduction that you're seeing there. Northwest, they're not backfilling a half a literacy position. And then Southeast is one you've heard a lot of conversation surrounding this afternoon or this evening. You know, the thing I think you would say is a couple of the commenters, I especially remember Mary talking there, you know, none of these cuts are good. We're not going to pretend that any of these things are good for students. Obviously, we've had them because we believe in them for kids. You know, the challenge for us was trying to avoid any rifts, as you see in my last line there. So that means taking advantage of every opportunity we have where we have a staff member leaving. And I think the other big goal we've heard from you consistently is trying to protect our core. That we know that's our highest leverage thing for students. We can certainly consider a lot of different things core. You know, there's a core element of music instruction as well. We have 4 to 5 core content areas that we want to try to preserve and not have class sizes be exacerbated to the point where when parents walk in the fall that they see 35 plus kids in their classrooms. So none of those groups necessarily are standing at the microphone talking to you right now. But that would be the result in August if we don't take advantage of some of these things, that parents would be coming to you at that point saying, what is going on in our secondary buildings with class size? So we really tried to look at whatever opportunities we had to take advantage of, and unfortunately, yes, music was an area we had to do that. I think you've seen a lot of email communication in our plan on that. It does mean less time for lessons for that teacher to do that. Ms. Schrock is an outstanding teacher. I've worked with her directly, and so I know it puts her in a difficult position to do that. But like I said, trying to keep those 2 goals in mind, that's why we are where we are. Keyboarding was the result of a reduction as well. The other one on there that I'm sure you'll have some questions about is the Earth and Space Science offering. We brought that to you a little over a year ago to start at the junior high. Previously, we hadn't required every student in our district to take a Foundations of a Science course. They were able to skip that. When science went through curriculum review, and we looked at the new science standards, it was apparent from that curriculum review team that we were going to need a course to cover those science standards, that we weren't going to be able to get it done by either accelerating over a course or adding it to another course, that it had to be a standalone course. So we added the junior high option at that time to allow students to hopefully progress through their science curriculum sooner and quicker for those that wanted to take the back level science or the back end science courses and the advanced placement opportunities. For us, again, trying to protect those 2 things, even though we think it's a good experience for kids, at this point we think it's something we need to look at as far as something we can do without if we have to. That students still have that opportunity to take it as freshmen. Right now it does create some challenges in 8th grade about forced choice for kids if they are exploring language or they are in multiple music opportunities and trying to double up on science at that point. So it's not without its challenges in our delivery model at the junior high right now. And then the last thing I would just say is we do anticipate about a 1.0 FTE savings from offering the comp instruction on site. We do receive funding back for being able to deliver that to our students on our high school campuses rather than sending them off-site. So by committing about roughly 2 FTE to that process, in teaching time, we recoup about a total of 1.0 FTE in savings. rather than sending those kids that would fill up those sections off-site somewhere else to take that course. It's really a more expensive offering for them to do that. And so for us, that's a 1.0 savings that we feel good about, and we feel good about our teachers that will be teaching that course.
And that's something that they would have been taking at the regional center and were bringing in-house and saving 1.5 FTE.
1.0, yep.
1.0,
Yep.
Okay. With the Earth science course at the junior high level, and you said we were doing that for a year, what was our participation in that?
I could forward you those participation numbers. I've sent those to a community member before. I could even come back to them here later. I don't have them pulled up right in front of me now, but
fairly
varies,
significant
by different schools. I think City High could have been. I probably shouldn't even say.
Okay.
I know we had one school that had more of our students participating at that at a higher rate. I'm thinking at City High because traditionally we've had more of the students skipping that course on that campus and going through, so that Foundations of Science just historically hadn't been something students there were doing. But like I said, the opportunity is still there as freshmen. It doesn't. The good thing about, I think, what we're presenting here is we're not taking opportunities away. I mean, in a way, I know they're accessing lessons less. They're going to have to wait on an opportunity. But for us, trying to keep the program intact was something that we tried to also consider without saying, well, you're never going to have a chance to do that, or you're never going to have that offering. So I think that would be another thing to consider with the science.
Now, is literacy a state requirement?
No, the 7th grade literacy program is not a state requirement.
Okay.
That's an add-on for us. It's not a required offering.
Okay. And looking at the savings on the secondary staff reductions, I've always been kind of baffled that, you know, we're in there we're considering, or are you figuring in that we are not offering the ag program next year?
This is with no new ads. So
With no
yeah,
new
this is
ads.
not
So-
considering ag.
But we are going to have the ethnic studies course at City High?
Ethnic studies, yes, was with their existing social studies staff.
Right.
Yeah. So no new ads to staff.
No new ads to staff with that. Now, it's been quoted for a long time that the first year of the ag course would be $600,000. And it seems like that should be $1.2 million savings if that figure that had been floated around in the paper for years is accurate. So that figure is inaccurate?
I don't think I'm prepared to comment on if that figure you're referring to is accurate or not. So I don't remember 600,000. I do remember it was a high line item. I don't think that line item was ever factored into our budget. As we were doing that, it was always going to be something on top of. It wasn't something we had existing staff to do. So if we were going to put that in there, I think the conversation with you has been that we're going to need to cut 600,000 from somewhere else or whatever we'd want to decide that figure is. If it's even $100,000 for one teacher, then that means this number needs to be 10 instead of 9.
Okay. And but we do have a staff member in the district that can teach it at Liberty, correct?
Yes, if we were going to involuntarily transfer that staff member to that position, they could do that.
Well, no. I'm just saying that Liberty has the highest number of students interested in the program, and a parent contacted me today that the number's gone up by 1, even though they had to actively push to get that added. And we had many people comment tonight, and I just want to read what the course offering is, because I think it's important, and I didn't want to interrupt any of the speakers, and I didn't want to comment at the time, and I was hoping they would hang around. But the Introduction to Agriculture, Foods, and Natural Resources, students participate in the Introduction of Agriculture, Foods, and Natural Resources course with experience, hands-on activities, projects, and problems. Students' experience will involve the study and communication, the science of agriculture, plants, animals, natural resources, and agricultural mechanics, while surveying the opportunities available in agriculture and natural resources. Students will learn to solve problems, conduct research, analyze data, work in teams, and take responsibility for their own work, actions, and learning. For example, students will work in groups to determine the efficiency and environmental impact of fuel sources in a practical learning exercise. Exactly what 6 speakers came before us and said we don't offer any curriculum on it. And we do, in a practical STEM-related course offering. And it's one that we agreed upon, and one that isn't going to cost us $600,000. And if we do have a staff member at a school certified to teach it, and we've got a section of students, 20 plus, maybe more if they know that it actually would give them the opportunity to be involved in that, I have a hard time delaying that any further than we do, especially when we had the amount of testimony before us tonight.
Where do we get that 100,000?
Excuse me?
I would just ask, Phil, I mean, just as we looked at this budget.
We have the instructor. I don't believe it'd be 100 instructors. I think it would be one instructor teaching one section of a year-long course.
But wouldn't they have to give up something that they're already assigned to teach? Meaning that there will be additional cuts or something? I mean, I'm trying to understand, if we force the teacher to teach this, if we force the person, they could potentially resign, correct?
Yeah, I think we addressed the question you're asking in your email this week, Phil, and put kind of the 3 big points surrounding that, really, surrounding trying to start a program with somebody that's not interested in starting it, the displaced numbers that would need to go there, and then the dollar figure is really also considering FFA and the summer contract. And so we'll do whatever you ask us to do, but I think, like you said, those are probably the factors to consider. You'd have a staff member that's not motivated necessarily to do it, or we know our staff will respond to the challenge and do a good job.
Right. Well,
you're going to have displaced cost, and then you need to figure in, what is the additional cost of that, because FFA, of course, goes along with the section of ag. So,
I follow you. Was it conveyed that it would be one section at the school that they're at teaching a course that they had?
I personally spoke to her 2 years
Okay.
ago when we started the conversation, or over a year ago. No interest at that time. This time we went back with the idea of just one section, and it's not there. And so I'm happy to have the ag conversation, but I think really what I wanted to make sure we also get feedback on is if you guys have any issues with these. And then if you want to direct us to do something with ag, we're happy to do that too. But
So Phil, sorry, Janet, it's Chase.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Just to answer your question, I mean, we worked with the association on this as well, and direct answer to your question is those parameters, it's my understanding, were all laid out to that teacher, and that was the response, even under those narrow circumstances that you laid out, that she wasn't interested in doing that. And to Rathina's point, yes, the teacher could leave the district. We're already in a circumstance where we're asking more than 24 of our teachers to take teaching roles in the district that they were not in this year by no choice of their own, because of budget circumstances, because of changes in enrollment. And so this would be another one on top of that, in a circumstance where, while I don't disagree with the points of the program that you added out, we're not forced into a situation. And so it's compounding a forced situation for other employees that already exist across the district.
Question 2, I know at one point we had asked if there were any other opportunities for students who were interested in ag, that whether it's through the regional center or through another district. Have we explored any of those opportunities, or is there any hope there?
Sure, that's a yes and no answer. One of the things that the regional center has tried to do since their inception is to offer an ag academy. They've struggled to gather enough interest in it. They do have enough interest to offer it this year. That doesn't meet the needs of all kids. I think it's important to recognize that the ag academy is certainly designed for kids that are juniors and seniors. It's not designed for kids that are freshmen and sophomore. I know earlier you'd asked for a breakdown on the students in terms of the grade level. We had a wide range of kids at all 3 high schools, 9 through 12. Certainly that kind of academy is not going to meet the needs of all kids. Maybe the one plus for it is they are going to offer it in the Early Bird Academy, so it's the 0-1 hour. So students who are interested in taking it would be able to get out to the campus, take the classes, and get back in time to start their second period class.
So it's a possibility for juniors and seniors is what I'm hearing you say.
If they're interested, there is that possibility for
And
them.
how do we even inform them of the opportunity?
That comes through our counseling staff.
Yeah, I was going to say, right now we'll have a list of students, obviously, we can go access that already expressed some interest to do that. In the past, we brought you agreements about other districts, as well.
We discussed the regional center at length in our steering committee when we worked on this completely. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. and with Kevin Kenny and the Clear Creek School District and ourselves, we ruled that out. At that time, we discussed the positives and the drawbacks with it. And one of the big drawbacks is it is the problems for Kirkwood Regional Center to offer an FFA curriculum. And there's some limitations to that, so.
Right, their ag program does not have that component.
No, and that in and of itself is one of the biggest factors for me for bringing this in. And I'm sorry if I'm the only guy here that, or person, excuse me, that recognizes the importance of FFA and what it brings with leadership and soft skills and all the things that our employers are looking for in our students and in future workers. And we don't have anything that offers it. It comes close to it. And that's a huge component of it. Huge component of it as well. But I am concerned with the speakers that have come before us talking about cuts in music. That's important. But we've, and they go back to the 2014 decision. Well, our home building program was eliminated, and that hasn't come back. And that wasn't a huge amount, and we had time when we had money, and we didn't do it. And we are required by the state to offer a certain amount of curriculum for students that aren't on that college path, and I don't think that we're meeting the needs of those students. At the secondary level, how many, with Project Lead the Way curriculum, do we have, am I correct in saying we have 8 one-year course offerings in Project Lead the Way?
I don't know specifically, but that number I don't think would be too far off base if it's exactly 8 or not. I will say, I mean, there's other things why I also talked about keeping intact the program. I mean, the City High one, for example, while it's not a 1.0 math cut, as I tried to talk to you about, I mean, there are some courses, as we've talked about, that will have to be on an every other year rotation, and I think Project Lead the Way is one of those in that area. So there's some standalone courses there, like you talked about, Phil, but we are also considering those, and how do we still provide the experience for kids, but maybe not just next year, that they'll have the experience at some time in high school.
So well, it's a deferral kind of concept, right? Yeah.
And, if you have 4 years potentially of taking Project Lead the Way, that seems like a very good offering, as opposed to 8, where you'd have to either double up to even take all the courses. AP courses, the State Department of Ed, how many do they require us to have? Am I correct in saying there are none? Right. Right. I know we have. I'm sorry if I'm going to beat that horse, but we offer a lot of those programs that cost money, that aren't required, and would we be? I think it may be time to have a real discussion on how many AP courses that we feel we can afford, because it all comes out of the same pot. We want to save this, but yet we're providing many offerings over here we're not required to. Our charge is K-12 education and providing paths and avenues. And music is a graded class. It is important. It's been proven, and for many of the reasons the speakers spoke tonight about it. But we need it. We need it for all of our students. We need pathways for everyone.
I think we agree, and I think we're facing budget cuts, and we've tried to be very methodical in terms of examining what options we have in front of us around the parameters of not riffing people, in terms of making sure we keep programs to serve those students who need those programs, in terms of underserved opportunities, closing the opportunity gap. And I think we've also talked about maintaining the core, as Matt described. We went through a process of looking at low enrollment classes. We've made decisions on that. And unfortunately, I think given the expense of starting up this program and the fact that we've got a teacher in the district who's not interested in actually teaching it, I think we've got some insurmountable issues around introducing ag this coming year. We as a board have voted to approve the ag curriculum, and my understanding is that when we move out of this budget deficit scenario, we're going to make sure that we introduce the ag program in a way that is successful, that's built for sustainability, that is starting off on a strong positive foot so that it's viewed positively in the district and not something, unfortunately, that we're forcing a teacher to teach. And so I don't think that's setting this program off on a good foot, and I would really want this to be successful, and I don't think we've got the conditions this coming school year to make that happen. That's my opinion. I do want to make a comment on the music situation at Southeast. One of the I guess principles that we had around shaping and going through this cut process was trying not to affect students who were needed supports through the schools. And the fact that so many of the speakers addressed the in-school lessons was a huge opportunity for students who wouldn't be able to afford potentially, private lessons. That really resonated with me and was compelling and felt like it was aligned with one of our key tenets of what we're going to try to protect. And I understand that this is a really, really hard process. And it's a delicate puzzle of who's certified and what courses do we have to offer and maintaining programs and all those things. But I just needed to say out loud that those, from students to instructors to parents, I was compelled by the fact that there are students who can't afford or have access to private lessons, and they get that kind of education through our public schools, and that was just compelling to me. Just had to say it.
I just have one comment or question on the ag, and then I'll go back to the sheet that you asked us to talk about. I've responded to many emails about ag. I really want a successful ag program in our district, not necessarily a ag class next year, but I want a program. And from what I understand of a successful ag program, it's not just the school year; it bleeds into the summer. There's some possibilities there for. You've even talked about this, Lori, growing some crops for profit. There's and to have a successful ag program, from what I know about it and talking with an instructor who's familiar with it, you really want to have the kids for a block of time, not just necessarily a period, 2 hours at a time or whatever it may be. So I really hope and I don't think anybody on our board doesn't want a successful ag program. So when we finally get it going here, I want it to be strong and I want it to be successful. With that being said, I just want to jump back to your sheet, Matt, and on the Earth and Space Science. You have to have a special certification to teach that?
No, not necessarily. We have a teacher that is able to do high school, that is also certified high school, and so since we give high school credit for that course, we just need to make sure the person instructing that at junior high level is also certified for that.
So for this year, is it just one instructor that's teaching at all 3 junior highs? So then that also, so that's what, 0.6 and then 0.4 travel?
Mm-hmm. So, the teacher's great. We think highly of her and her abilities to do that, but you're right, it is not a very efficient 1.0 FTE.
And on that topic, is that class going to be offered in 8th grade when the budget crisis is passed? So are we going to bring it back?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think, like I said, there's some challenges with that. I think ideally we, would reevaluate all these things as the budget recovers and figure that out. But when we started this class, I think there was advocates on both sides of that on whether or not, it was a good option for kids. I think if it helps our kids and they can accelerate through, that's great. I do think it has put kids into an uncomfortable position about thinking they need to do it, and but it is important for some families and for some students to be able to access it. So I definitely think we'll consider it. I just don't want to say yes, of course we'll do it, because the impact of making the change and pushing to high school, people may have a different opinion or review of it after a period of time too.
The other thing I'd argue is that it really opened up a whole new set of questions, and it goes to Phil's comment about literacy. We've had some extensive conversations about what is the elective rotation at the junior high level. Are we meeting kids' needs? That elective rotation was developed a long time ago, We've had feedback from junior high teachers, from junior high administrators, from students and parents. And so I think as we've looked at some of the changes that have happened in our junior high program over the last couple of years, it's caused them as a collective body to step back and re-examine their work and say, maybe there's alternatives besides what we're doing right now. And so my argument would be to actually, and I think that's why Matt was hedging a little there, is we've actually talked about, let's step back from the whole model and take a look at it. Let's look at literacy. Let's look at the way our classes are blocked out. Is it the right period structure for the day to meet our needs, those type of things? And I would think that as we go through a budget recovery process, that rather than just adding it back, we'd really examine that collectively as a board, as a community, and say, does junior high meet kids' needs right now, or are there other opportunities perhaps that set kids up better for course selection? If you look at our high school course of studies right now, we've got that map in there as you go to the back for each of those core content areas that says, what might you look at for a course progression based on your career interests? We tried to reach back into the junior high, and that was one of the first places that we started saying, maybe if we align that a little bit differently, there's a different trajectory for kids there. So I think that could be one of our heavy lifts collectively as a board and a community here as we look at that budget recovery process, is to really say, how does junior high meet our kids' needs?
Oh, yeah.
Thing. I answered that question incorrectly. You asked me. I was thinking about what we do with math and world language. So for math and world language, we now have to give high school credit if they take those courses in 8th grade, and we do need high school certified instructors to do that. For science, we've allowed them to progress in their sequence, but they don't necessarily receive credit for that class. And so that was a state legislative change. So that instructor actually is K-8 certified for us. And so as long as they're certified to teach junior high and we're offering it junior high and there's not high school credit attached to it, we're okay with that. So I just didn't answer that question correctly. I want to make sure you guys had a clear understanding of that.
And truth be told, when this was on the table a while ago, I was at the table and I actually didn't vote for this model. So I will say a question that I asked at that time and I will ask again is, could we explore an early bird option for that class at the high school level, so that our students that would like to accelerate in science could have that opportunity without having to choose between that and another elective such as music. Because once they add in that foreign language, it does become difficult to add on those music electives or drama or art or whatever. And I know that presents some issues with contract with the association. I don't know if we've explored that, but I'm just going to put it out there. You don't have to answer now, but it's a question I've asked before. I just wanted to bring it up again.
Just make a comment quick. I appreciate what you said, Steve, about as we start adding back in, really examining what the priorities are. I know for me, the community comment has really affected kind of how I see orchestra. That's not something I have a lot of experience with. Teacher librarians, I knew just from being a teacher. Very familiar with their role, but hearing the comments tonight about orchestra, and I think as we move forward and as our budget recovers and as we're adding these back in, getting that kind of input on what is the priority, and I've often asked the question, does junior high really serve our kids? I mean, it's basically like mini high school. Is that really what we want? Is college prep all the way down to 7th grade? I just think these are issues to think about, and prioritize. And just as we add it in, just finding where those priorities are, and hopefully that changes as I hear more from the community. And just real quick on AgFil, I do support that. I can tell you that if you have a teacher who doesn't want to teach it, it's not going to succeed. We're not going to have a good FFA chapter. I bet that those FFA chapters that are good have very strong leaders who aren't only teaching the content, they're reaching out into the community, they're bringing in those community partners, they're making really strong partnerships. I think we have a real opportunity here. I think if we get off to a rough start and say have a teacher quit mid-year because they just aren't into it or don't show up at all, I think the community is going to lose faith that we can pull it off. And I'm worried that we'll lose that opportunity if we rush into it just to do it. That's my fear with that, because I do want to see that succeed. I do understand how important FFA is, and we don't offer anything remotely like it, and we need to. And I think, and the reason I like that is it's something we can just plug into. We don't have to invent it ourselves. We don't have to go somewhere else. It's a robust organization in our state. Iowa City can plug into it, and I'd like us to do that in a strong way and not sort of a, well, they have a token program, but, you know, that would be my concern. That's all I'll say on that.
Sean, did you want to jump in? Oh, Ruthina, then Sean.
Thank you for giving me your time. I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments. Listening to the commenters tonight regarding the equitable cuts in music, as well as the many emails that I've been reading throughout the day, that is a part that I'm struggling with on whether or not, because we see some inequity in what people can afford and who it will impact the most. So that's a piece that I'm just really struggling with what I see tonight. The other one is more of a question. It's related to the FTE reduction that West High has allocated, and just trying to get you to share with the community, why is it that West High has almost double what City will be seeing and almost triple what Liberty
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I should explain that at the beginning. So that is due to the amount of students transferring to Liberty, and Liberty's cut is so small because basically by not adding staff there, I'm cutting them. The fact that you know they're going to have that many more students and not receive new staff is almost like a budget cut to their master scheduling process and their staffing scenario. West is going down students. I will say their administrative team was great in that, recognized that right away, knew that would be a disproportionate share of FT to be reduced, as they have been at this whole time with transition through Liberty. And then City High capitalized on some of the opportunities they had, but again, I mean, they're not shrinking at all, right? And so those are all tight for them as well. But that's why West High's is so much larger.
Thanks.
All right, bide my time. I've got a thank you, a frustration, and then I actually have some questions. So I know at the last meeting, or maybe it was even 2 meetings ago, we were looking at the numbers in aggregate, right? And looking at a 9 at secondary and looking at the total number of resignations and retirees and comparing that to how many we're keeping. And I was like, well, what are the other things, right? And we didn't really have a sense of what all those other positions were. And I don't know how clear it is, but this is the first time we're seeing that broken down for those secondary things. So I really appreciate seeing that, because I think that is shaping the rest of the conversation, because without that, it's just this amorphous number 9, and it's not real meaningful. So I really appreciate that. The frustration I have is that I was asked about specifically how the music thing was going on at Southeast before I knew it. And I had to answer, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that's a really uncomfortable situation to be in. So I know we had to wait to get all of the information for what kids were registering for and all of this other stuff, and working to get all that into place. But it was I honestly didn't know what somebody was talking about when they laid out the whole plan as to what was going on at Southeast to me, and I didn't know what that was. And that was uncomfortable. To that end, now I have questions that I probably should have stopped Lisa or Mark when they were up at the microphone. But when we look at equity, I'm seeing numbers-wise on this little piece of paper that the lesson time for Southeast is going down to match what North Central is. So that seems even. However, I have no idea what the numbers are. So the questions that I have, and if you guys don't have them, that's fine, but I would kind of like to know how many students are in orchestra at all the junior highs, what the frequency of lessons are at the different places. Are they doing them differently? And do all kids receive the same number of lessons? I know they talked a lot about some students who have private lessons, are so much better off. Are they getting less lessons in the school, and the kids who aren't getting private lessons are getting more? I'd like to just know where they're at currently. If we're going to look at what's equitable, I don't really feel like I have any idea what they're doing now to know whether it is or not. So that'd be the questions I could pass on to them if you guys don't have the answers, which
So I can tell you we
wouldn't
don't
expect you
right
to,
now, but Matt and I have already had some dialogue about essentially taking that chart that we built out for Southeast for you. For orchestra, we can build that out for orchestra, band, and choir. We can do it for each of the 3 junior highs. We can actually pull for you registration numbers So you can see how many kids are in there. For instance, I can tell you that there's about 200 kids in band at Southeast and 100 kids in orchestra, because I did pull that number today. But we can pull the rest of those numbers and put similar charts for you together and do that in pretty short order.
That would be nice.
One thing I'll say that's just a challenge from the process, right, is making the two pieces fit together again. So
I know,
achieving equity while also not riffing people. And so if riffing employees is a tool, we can create a better equitable balance. Without using that as a tool, it is very difficult to achieve an equitable solution. And so I'm not going to lie to you and say that's equitable. The only thing I would ask you to consider is, if we're serious about that, we're serious about considering the equity of our other programs and the programs that they serve as well, or the children that they serve as well. You know, I think we've come to the best solution we can. I wouldn't present it to you if I didn't think it was the best solution. And so I would just also ask you to consider that. But I appreciate your questions, and like Steve said, we can come back with that information.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate the looking at not getting rid of people, right? Keeping the, Brady said it, right? Keeping the people here that want to be here, right? Like, that's an important thing. And I have a lot of respect for our staff here, and I appreciate everything they do. And part of that is the ones that are still here are going to share an extra burden, right? And I want to make sure that we are keeping in mind of those folks that are still here, right? Just as much as anybody who might be leaving. But at the same time, you know, our number one priority is always the kids. And so inequity is a thing that we're all going to consider. And I think that it needs to be there, even while saying, but this way we don't fire people, right? And I get that. That's not something I want to do. I'm not going to want to walk into a school and do that myself, right? So I wouldn't want to ask it of you unless there was a real reason why we should do so. And without knowing what all of the numbers are, I don't know if there's a good reason to do so. So that's the kind of information I'm looking for, to say, you know what? I think in this particular case, I'm speaking hypothetically now, in this particular case, there is a reason to riff somebody because we have to save something here to meet the needs of students. And I would, before I go and say, nope, we're just going with this, I just like to have a little bit more of that data. So I appreciate that.
We can put that together for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one question I forgot to ask, sorry. To the point of FFA and not the soft skills and things of that nature, I do believe that's an important thing. I'm just wondering if in the time that we don't have that, do things like the BPA chapters that we have fulfill some of those needs? Like do they teach on that, I would assume, the soft skills project learning?
Yeah, I think the idea for us is, you know, we hope we can provide a multitude of opportunities for kids to learn those different skills, and that they engage in one and are able to develop those. And obviously FFA would provide a different route to do that, but we do have existing routes, like you mentioned, for students to access and try to get at those skills.
Yeah, I'd argue that those skills are both universal and context-based. So certainly Business Professionals of America creates public speaking and leadership and those kinds of skills, just like FFA does. It's embedded in a different context, so that'll meet some kids' needs, and it probably won't meet some other kids' needs.
Sorry, I just have one really quick. I wanted to say thank you to you, Matt, for working with the secondary administrators to give us this, because I do know that you all had to put an immense amount of time into this, and that you were very thoughtful with what you're suggesting. So I don't want our questions, or my questions, I can't speak for everybody else, my questions to come across as though I'm not appreciative of the work, because I know that you and the secondary administrators worked really hard on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting, Steve, Matt, bringing this information to us. This was a good conversation, and
Bill's got one more.
Yeah, and just before we wrap this up, two categories. Well, there are several categories that we're really not concentrating on, and we use the example of Davenport many times as a bad example. And they didn't do everything right. But the superintendent there did everything in his power to still provide offerings for their students. And I think there's more opportunities for us in admin staffing. I'm going to throw that one out there. Look at that a little closer, because we can see what a 2 FTE does. It's 4.8. It's almost $500,000. And if you find another 2, RAM staffing reduction doesn't happen, and teacher librarians stay as is. Just throwing that out there. District travel has to.
Sorry, Phil, real quick. What are your suggestions? That abstract thought doesn't really give us the guidance, and so
I would say look at, and this goes back to very early on in this discussion with a flow chart and looking at duties. I also would revisit the SENACI report, the opportunities that were in there that were identified. Have we done everything to wring out the efficiency that came out in that SENACI report? I'm frustrated when I see the same type of purchasing issues constantly, especially in a period where we're in this tight cycle. I think there's opportunities with the physical plant, and that's not looked at all. And when we're still in a process where we're using a chemical that's been proven in a court of law, we have risk aversion issues that are going to cost us long term. I think also our legal representation is costing us long term. I think that's something to look at. Extracurriculars, we didn't look at that at all. And to me, the biggest hit is instruction to our students in the classroom. And I understand we're the complexities and
no, I actually appreciate
third-party contract.
Sure.
This is my
Sorry,
final
sorry.
point. No, I apologize. And the third-party contracts, which was when we started, it was at the top. The first example that was given was Thought Exchange, which was brought before the board 3 times, voted down twice, came back, was used, not very much, and we collectively approve every penny that's spent. And we have the right to say no when we see things come in front of us and we don't think it's appropriate spending, which we have an obligation to the community to say no. And I understand you guys put in a lot of time, you've worked on it very hard, but I'm putting in that last pitch that, I would strongly look at SENACI. Not everything that happened in Davenport was a bad example, and hope that we can do the best that we can.
Appreciate the comments. I think we're going to move on to the next item. We need to hear about our grant progress. And Steve, is that going to be you?
It is going to be me. So we've got 2 reports there for you. The one is from our rep at FRK. And I know that one is a bit complicated to read as you go through those first few pages, but that's the Gantt chart for the entire project, shows it by unit A, B, and C, literally shows every element of a construction project. We get that on a weekly basis. Andrew does a wonderful job representing us up there. The question that I ask him every week, that he responds to every week, is, are we on track? The answer is yes. I think the report that might be a little bit easier to read from that standpoint, just because it's in aggregate, is the one that Mike from Bi-State sends over to me on a regular basis, and that is the slide deck that shows you where each of the units at in terms of major areas of operation, electrical, rough end, mechanical, finishes, and substantial completion. You can see where we're at in each of those units. I know we're under winter weather advisory right now, but fortunately that's significantly farther north. Weather has been cooperative for us. Things are moving along really well. Actually, Andrew just sent me the latest update, which I'll get out to you tomorrow. But again, after another week's worth of exam, we are on track. Things are looking good. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Seeing how our area will get a substantial amount of rain tomorrow and Thursday, how will that impact things out there?
So as we're looking forward, one of the things that obviously we don't anticipate 100% sunny days as we go through there. So given our expectations on a week-by-week basis, I think especially as you look at the first report that has the Gantt chart on there, you could see that there are areas where we're ahead of pace. And so I think that gives us the opportunity to continue to maintain progress that's required. Again, the bonus of the reports from Andrew and Mike is we get those on a weekly basis, and so we'll literally be able to see on a Tuesday or Wednesday, week by week, if there's anything that looks like it's slipping, we'll be able to report that to you immediately.
Yeah, there is a lot of rain coming, looking at the forecast, like the next 2 weeks. So we're, but because but the roof's on.
I was
so
going to say maybe the one of the things to offer is we're enclosed now, which is a plus. If you look at the, in particular, Andrew's report that has all the photos on there, you can see that there's been substantial work on the outside, whether it's the front parking area and the drive, some of the dirt that's been moved out there. Obviously took advantage of some of the good weather to work on that. We're under roof now, so in many cases that rain will have less and less impact on us the further and further we go into the process.
I just want to thank you guys for getting us back on track and making sure we're getting it done and doing all the hard work and being at these meetings and providing us with these reports. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, I'd echo that too, and I really like these reports. They're helpful so we can see it, see what's going on, and thanks for your work.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, and keep up the good work. Keep it going. With that, we'll turn to upcoming events and community updates. Director Liaison report.
Oh, we got an action item.
First, we need to act on the budget.
Boy, I'm really rushing, aren't I? Oh, we've got to do the tax levy one. All right.
Yes.
Wow.
The one thing that must be done tonight.
I know. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
Craig almost came running in.
I move to
the spirit of Craig. Yeah.
I move to approve the ICCSD fiscal year 2020 proposed certified budget and tax certification.
Second.
Any conversation, discussion?
Let's see, I had one, I believe, I think it's on page 128. With the 2019 re-estimate and the 2020 and that would be an estimate at this point, Les, is that right? There.
Which line are you on?
Line 28, on page 1?
The business and central administration?
Yes.
Line? Yes, those are all. 2020 is just a roll forward of the current year with estimates of things that we are projecting.
Right, and so with our discussions and everything, that's, with what we just discussed earlier, that's the projection.
We haven't factored in all of the $5 million budget adjustments at this point.
Okay.
But that would certainly be reflective on future reports in going forward in next year.
Okay.
Any further comment or conversation? Hearing none, Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Now we can talk about Director Liaison report. Anything directors would like to comment on?
I just want to point out that I beat Ruthina in the reading at Hoover.
I know, but let the record be noted that he cheated.
All right, little friendly competition here. That's good.
I want to point out a couple things from the Metropolitan Organization of Johnson County. If you wondered what MPOJC stands for, that's what it is. Two things. The committee approved grant funding for their 2020 fiscal year, and they did include in that some funding for the stretch of Camp Cardinal Boulevard, which is currently not bordered by a sidewalk or a path or any kind of means to get from Highway 6 to the bike path on Camp Cardinal, which is where some of our Kirkwood students will be needing to traverse with our new boundaries. And so The good news is that that funding has been approved. The bad news is that they won't get to it till 2020 fiscal year, but I'm glad to see that that's going to be taken care of. The second thing I want to mention is that North Liberty Road, which is adjacent to a parcel that we've purchased a while ago for a future school site. Also, the MPOJC approved some funding for a path that's going to go around that corner with Front Street and North Liberty Road. You all know where I am. There's a curve there. So that'll be a great way to connect Front Street all the way down to Liberty. There'll be a path that'll go all the way through there, a bike path or extra wide sidewalk. So that's also going to be really helpful for us in the future when we develop that land.
Great, thank you.
I'll just make a quick comment that it was really as a parent, but I wanted to point out Kirkwood had a fundraiser at McDonald's during the week, and it was great, super well attended. I got to meet a couple former Kirkwood students who were working in the back, and Principal Gerling was quite proud to introduce them. And so real successful. I think some of our other schools are kind of going to that model where families are able to go out and afford a meal and raise some money for the school. So that was a good time, and I thought a really good idea, and thanks to McDonald's for kind of helping out with that.
That's great. Thanks, JP. Anything else? Legislative updates? Anything, Steve, to share that is new?
There's a lot of things moving at the Capitol right now. Probably the two things that are of greatest interest to us are the work on SAVE and children's mental health. The Senate Ways and Means Committee is focused on the SAVE work right now. A lot of bipartisan support. A lot of groups from many different areas of community support that are coming out in favor of that. I think as we reach the end of the bonding window, especially for many of our smaller communities that struggle to get general obligation bonds passed, and this is their only funding source, the support for that's coalescing. And we thought it would be through at the beginning of the session. It's been held up a little bit. It's now kind of caught in that political machine and what it might get connected or attached to, and so there's a little bit of backroom conversation going on, but there's still a lot of optimism that it'll get out by the end of the session. And then the children's mental health bill, again, lots of bipartisan support for it, recognize a lot of the challenges out there. Now the big discussion that's taking place both on the floor and off the floor is about funding for it. And I think the last report that I got from our legislators and from some others is that they recognize that this may be one of those issues where they have to pass it without funding to start with, and then as we move into subsequent legislative funding sessions, they will look for sources to attach to the programming. That has goods and bads. That means that there will be either opportunities or perhaps obligations for the district that may come as an unfunded mandate, but recognizing the importance of children's mental health, I think, is a really positive step forward.
Any questions for Steve?
And that large omnibus bill that did all that stuff didn't get through the funnel, so it's dead, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move to agenda setting. We've got an education committee on the 16th with topics ethnic studies update, reading supports, and setting the agenda for the 21st meeting. We have a retreat on the 20th. Again, unfortunately, our directors' schedules are such that not all of us are going to be able to participate. We went with the greatest number, and I'll be meeting with folks ahead of time to get their sense of inputs for this session. But we've got some time we're going to spend on the district mission statement and student learning goals, vision and mission development. This feels like a good time to kind of recoalesce around those. We're going to look at the religious considerations. Ruthina, you've raised that a number of times around our calendar. I think we need to make sure we cover that. And then this question around the professional development. Do we want to try to go with a model for a half-day release, a full-day release? We just haven't taken time as a board to really dig into that. So I think we need to. We know that professional development is a big topic for our teachers, and we want to make sure we spend some time on that to figure out what makes sense going forward.
Have we contacted staff to get any feel, how they feel on that?
Yes, we did. We worked with our ICA leadership team to get some feedback from them, and Brady worked with his rep council and some other members of their team so that I'll be able to relay that information when we're together.
Well, we can invite Brady to spend his weekend with us as well if he'd like to.
I want to commit later.
Yeah.
You can ride your bike here. You can get it. half of it.
That's true. That's great. Well, you're always welcome, Brady.
Thank you.
So then we have an agenda on the 23rd for a full board meeting. We've got a consent agenda. We have a discussion on the school year calendar following our retreat. And we'll have discussions also around religious leader input and then outcomes of the options around the half-day, full-day professional development activities. So our retreat's really going to be funneling inputs to the April 23rd meeting. We'll have presentations from the School Safety Advisory Committee and also the Lucas Before and After School update. And then we'll have an action item on the budget that we just were discussing earlier. So that's the agenda for the 23rd.
I would like to make one comment and one suggestion. On the 23rd, that comment would just be that the School Safety Committee report, just so you guys know, that will be the recommendations from the School Safety Committee after our almost year-long, I guess, meetings. And my second one would be that I would suggest that we remove the action item, put that into a discussion, because I think we had some questions here that maybe weren't answered. I'm not sure if everyone's ready to vote on that, those budget reductions. That's just my opinion, so I would defer to the rest of you.
Yeah, I think that'd be a very good move, Paul.
So my suggestion would be to, if that's what if the majority of the people want to do that, I would put that topic in the work session for that night and move the vote to a future board
I would
meeting.
appreciate that.
And we can certainly do that. The only caution I have for you is that if we are to do any reductions in force, that is required to be done by April 30th. So one of the things that we will need from you on the 23rd as we go through that is to understand, are we in a zero-sum game for further meetings? In which case then it's a matter of reshuffling FTE that we have on the deck. Or, as we were talking about earlier, Sean, are we looking at reductions in force? Because if so, we have to direct those to take place by the 30th. So
another option could be is if we had at the end of the Education Committee meeting, we had a work session
I was just
to cover
thinking the same
that. That
thing.
would give us that week, and then the 23rd, I would be okay
Sure.
with that.
We could do that.
I like that idea better, just from a timing perspective and giving us, if we end up having to do
Absolutely.
this, we've got enough time to manage that process. And so if people can commit to when, let's see, the Education Committee starts at
16th?
4:30.
Yep.
And when we think we would start work session 6?
Sure.
5:36?
Yeah, that's not probably a super long agenda, do you think, Amy? Of course. Yeah, okay.
Just a spot of clarification, Brady's been chased from behind me, and to what Steve said, so because people could be watching this later, is we have to notify staff by April 30th. Any risk would then have to come back to the board by May 15th. So
Okay.
that would be at the May 14th board meeting, just for that clarity in case anybody's watching at home, as he said. Sorry for
Okay.
the technicality, but we want
No,
to
it's good.
be clear on the process.
Absolutely, that's good. So remind me, say again, on the 16th, we're going to do... Perfect, thank you.
And then add the discussion about the budget.
And the work session, we'll just start as soon as Education Committee
Or,
finishes.
yeah,
but,
it'll
I
be a
mean,
separate
we'll
work
just roll
session,
right
right.
into it, but 5:30-ish, probably 6 o'clock at the latest to start that. Good, that's a great discussion and addition. I think that makes sense.
And then just to point out to people who are watching, that meeting will not be here. It's at North Central. So if there's people
Right.
that want to come to hear the work session discussion on the budget, it will be at North Central.
Very good.
And are we still on the board agenda for
Yeah, sure.
the next one?
I think we're on all of them.
With the emails we've been getting and the speakers tonight, and I don't know if this would be, we haven't had an operations committee, and I don't know how long, and I know Dwayne would like to comment on what we are doing with solar and things in the district and those types of things. Maybe we plan either an update at a board meeting or have a legitimate operations discussion about it, but I think we owe it to the community to recognize their concerns. I'd like to get all of our students in the classroom learning instead of protesting outside of rooms, which I understand what they're doing, but I think we need to have a discussion on that and that. So I would put that out as far as if we have an operations discussion or have it as a topic in a board meeting.
I think
had a very similar thought when I was going through our board docs ahead of this meeting. You know, before everybody came up and spoke about it, I was like, you know, a while back we decided that operations was kind of a big deal and needed to be everybody, not a subcommittee, and then we promptly don't talk any operations things. I mean, I guess the safety update came out of the operations committee, so I guess there is that, but I think having a discussion, you know, and I know we've spoke with emails and stuff about what's feasible and what's not feasible, but I think it's fair to have a
I'd actually
public
argue
conversation about.
we might want to think about expanding the conversation. I know one of the things, and Jeff's not here anymore, but you know, the last time we had the conversation, we had a sustainability advisory committee. It kind of petered out. We had students and we had some parents on there, and they had some great conversations. We talked a lot about recycling. They did a lot of research into it. They looked into compost issues. They brought back a lot of really valuable information for us, some good, some bad, some opportunities, some challenges. But I think it would be good to look at it from a systemic standpoint and to consider revamping that committee and sending it out with a charge. And it's the whole reduce, reuse, recycle process, and to really have a good comprehensive conversation about that and set some goals.
Well,
So
and it is pertinent to our budget discussion too, because, you know, if there's opportunities for savings and operations, we need to be exploring those as much as possible, so.
If it'd be all right with you, what I'd like to do is put a charge out, and I know Dwayne will give me some time frame on this, but to really get a good comprehensive review of what's going on now, so we see where our opportunities are, and then bring that back to you so we can hopefully look at some of those gaps, and then, like I said, set some goals and some charges for that. And then add that to a work session.
And I was going to say that looking at it from a higher level, it's something we also could talk about at a retreat when we talk about mission statements, student learning goals.
Sure.
I think that would be so that Montimo doesn't feel like we have not addressed his request tonight. If we could talk about that as part of our mission, that
Absolutely.
would hopefully.
I like that idea a lot, because then that's coming up soon, and then it can help shape, because I
think
feel like we need a
we'll
little
start our
discussion
work now, yeah.
But I feel like we need to have a little bit more discussion around framing that sustainability committee, if that's the direction that we want to go, or we want to take it a different direction. I think starting that at the board retreat around mission, vision, goals helps us have that conversation and shore up what the next steps need to be.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's great. Thanks, Phil and Lori and Steve, for those suggestions. That's really good, and Sean for weighing in on that. So then we've also got a work session on the 23rd. We've got the University of Iowa Public Policy Institute report. We'll have an update discussion around Pearl. And then just to note, under the future agenda items, these are the items and topics that we had discussed at our last retreat that we wanted to make sure that we had time carved out for at some point in future work sessions. Direction for the district and impact on facilities, sort of that future view beyond our current FMP. A lot of interest and energy around partnering with the business and trade communities to create pre-apprenticeships or other kinds of hands-on project-based opportunities. And what does that look like? What can we begin working on there? We wanted to keep conversation up with the equity committee to review and continue to provide input on the modified comprehensive equity plan. And then we had talked about development activity around restorative practices. I know we're moving into a really busy time of the year with regular board meetings plus school activities, but as we look at future work session agendas, that's the running list of topics that we will try to slot in perhaps after the April 23rd session. So, with that, any further comments on upcoming agendas?
Well, yeah, on the, so the future agenda item discussion, that's just a discussion on the discussion?
It's just a running list. It's just a running list of topics that we just didn't want to lose sight of.
Right.
And
no.
so,
Okay.
so when we schedule future work sessions, this is kind of our backlog of topics that we want to begin to address.
I just wanted to know if I should let the Carpenters Union and the steam fitters know that they're coming in.
But when we decide we want to have this discussion at a work session, we'll want to make sure we get that kind of community input.
We may actually want to move that item into the retreat agenda, because these came out of our last retreat. That might give us an opportunity at the retreat to put other items on there and start to develop some future agendas.
And maybe kind of plot out the work sessions for the rest of the year and kind of see what makes sense from a scheduling standpoint. I think that's a good idea. Let's add that to the retreat. That's good. Okay, anything else? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.